Hello and welcome to Facebook Live running commentary. Incredible, beautiful thought. A little bit of light amidst the corona darkness of the world. We're all struggling to find solutions. Here's one: learn some Torah while we have some extra time at home or at work, confined, quarantined by choice or mandatory. So the question we're going to address today, this is a talk from a few parshas ago by Tetzaveh, but I didn't get a chance to mention it until now. It's so beautiful, and it's somehow related to the question of what's more important, the process or the journey. The process and the journey, or the destination. What's more important, the process or the destination, the journey or the destination? Process or the goal. And here we have a fantastic three-pronged lesson, and there's a lot more, but I'm extracting three prongs from the Rebbe's talk about the mitzvah that God commanded Aaron to prepare oil for the menorah. So there's the mitzvah to light the menorah, and they had to use olive oil that was pure. The words the Torah uses is Tetzaveh, now command this Ibn Ezra, the Jewish people, they should take for you. These are the words, and it's almost a play on the words that sparked a great debate. The words in Hebrew are shemen, zayis, zach. Shemen in Hebrew is oil, zayis is olives, zach is pure. Oil, olives, pure. The way we would translate it in English would be pure olive oil. But since every word in the Torah is exact, we have a debate between two great biblical commentators. Rashi is famous as the primary biblical commentator, and a contemporary of Rashi, Ibn Ezra, was also a very famous, well-respected biblical commentator. We'll go with Ibn Ezra first. The Ibn Ezra says, shemen zayis, zach. If you look at the words, the word zach, pure, is right next to the word zayis, olive. So it's the olive that needs to be pure. So the question I neglected to say, the question over here is, what needs to be pure? Is it the olives or the oil? Okay, let's put that in the framework. What needs to be pure when the Torah says pure olive oil for the menorah in the holy temple? Is it the olives that need to be pure or the oil? Ibn Ezra says, it says the word pure is right next to the word olives. So the olives need to be pure, unscathed, unbruised, perfect olives. Rashi says, don't worry about the olives. It's the oil that needs to be pure. And that's the pshat, simple meaning. Now we go on, we'll take it a step further and take this a little deeper. There's a Jewish tradition and a perspective about how a mitzvah needs to be performed. It goes all the way back to the first offering that we know, one of the first anyway, were Cain and Hevel. Cain and Abel, way back up in the Genesis of time, and in the book of Genesis, where Cain killed Abel. But why did he kill him? Because he brought the best offering, the best of his flock, and that's what God appreciated. The Rambam, Maimonides, says we learn from here is Kol Chelev LaHashem. Whenever we offer something to God, it has to be made out of the best stuff on earth. It has to be the best. If you're building a synagogue, a shul, in your community, it needs to be the best, most beautiful building. if you are donating clothing to poor people or food, it has to be the best clothing you have and the best food you have. Interestingly, and the approach is that we're not really just giving something to another person, but we're actually offering this and donating it to God Almighty. And when you offer something to God, you need to give God your best, the best you have. So here too, the question is, and the Rambam talks about 9 levels of oil, of purity in oil, only some of which are good for the temple, some of which are good for the offerings. But the point over here is that we need to use the best. So now the question is, and the debate between Rashi and Ibn Ezra is, how about the preparation? We understand that the oil has to be good, has to be the best, but what about the preparation for the oil? The olives in this case, do they need to be also the best? Or is it okay to have bruised olives, not the best olives? They don't look so good, they don't taste so good, but as long as the product is good, it's fine. And that's the debate. Rashi says, we just look at the oil. It's the oil that needs to be pure. Don't worry about the olives. Ibn Ezra says, no, the olives need to be perfect. The olives need to be pure and perfect and untouched and unscathed, unbruised. So that's the halachic perspective. Now we're going to dive deeper into the Hasidic realm, and which brings a very, very powerful lesson at the end of it. And that is as follows. We're all in our lives, we're all working and struggling to create a home for God within ourselves. That's what we do. We bring God into our lives, into our homes. The question now is, what's more important, the process or the goal or the destination? The journey or the destination? And this seemingly is what the dispute, the debate between Rashi and Ibn Ezra is. And it goes something like this. In the mystical world, the olive is a bitter, physically it's a bitter fruit on the tree. It's bitter, it's hard to eat, and it represents darkness. And it doesn't represent the light that comes from the oil. The olive itself represents darkness. The oil represents the light. One of the areas, some of the places we see that the olive represents darkness is actually biblically the story of Noah and the flood, where the bird goes out and brings back an olive leaf, which today has become a symbol of peace or other beautiful things. But the real story was that the bird was saying, I'd rather survive on something as bitter as an olive than rely on the favors of you, Noah, of mankind. I'd rather rely directly from God, even if it's as bitter as an olive. So it's a different perspective of the olive branch that everybody knows about. Another area is that the Torah tells us, the tradition tells us, that olives are kasha l'shikha, which means that there's actually a Jewish law, not very much known, but there's a Jewish law that olives can cause, it's like a Jewish superstition, we can say, that olives cause people to forget their study. You study something, eat olives, you forget it, unless you put some olive oil into the olives. So that's a practical thing you can walk away with today. Whenever you open up a jar of olives, or a case of olives, or a container of olives, or a boatload of olives, we always pour a little bit of olive oil onto the olives before we use them. Because the Halacha, the Jewish law, says that we do this. Without it, can cause forgetfulness. And forgetfulness is an ungodly thing. There's no forgetfulness in God. So olive is seen as a negative, and oil is seen as a positive. The oil creates light, Oil is also symbolic of the level of chachma, of wisdom. It always rises to the top. And in the process of creating the world, God started with chachma. The process of creation of the 10 sefirot of creation, the chain of command of creation, started with chachma, with wisdom. So olive oil represents the top of the line of creation. It's the highest thing we have. It's the light. It's the beginning of light. But olives themselves represent darkness. So here we have, in our journey to bring God into our life, we have two perspectives, one from the Ibn Ezra and one from Rashi, on the same olive and oil, but very different. So the Ibn Ezra says, the olives need to be perfect, not just the oil, which means to say that our journey in this world, our body, our actions, our thoughts, our speech, our deeds, everything about us need to be perfect. Not just the resulting oil, but the olives themselves. The process through which we make the oil has to be perfect. And then you've fulfilled your mission. And that is what we strive for. It's not always reachable 100% of the time, but that's what we strive for. So over here we see from the biblical command that to bring pure olive oil, the Ibn Ezra says it has to be, the olives have to be pure, and a related lesson is that our journey in life, we have to be perfect as can be human beings in order to fulfill our mission. Rashi teaches something different. Rashi says, don't worry about the olives. The olives can be bruised, they can be crushed, they can be dirty, it doesn't matter. It's the oil that matters. It's the oil that counts. What does that mean? So, in the Hasidic teachings, it talks about another dimension of this olive, of the darkness of the olive, which is very deep. And it says that, of course, the oil produces the light. So the oil is representative of light and goodness. But where does that light come from? Light has a source. Where does the oil come from? It has a source. It comes from the olives. So if the oil comes from the olives, that means the olives are actually higher than the oil, than the light which emanates from the oil. Now, well, why does that look like? But in the reality of our world, it still looks like darkness. The olives are bitter, and the space, the dimension before light began, before creation started with Chachma, that dimension is dark because there's no light there. So Chassidus explains it's a darkness, but it's not a bad darkness. It's a darkness because we, in our world, we don't have the tools, the ability, the capability to observe the power of that dimension. So it is darkness for us, but it's the source of light. It's where the light comes from, so it has to be higher than the light. What does that mean for us? What's its relevance? So we might be able to take a lesson from this, that Rashi is teaching us that the olive is our past, that which might not have been so perfect. And we're trying to make it perfect and pure. And if a person says, oh, you know what, my past, my olives, they've got bumps and bruises on them. They're bruised, they're imperfect, they're scratched, they're mushed, they're squished. My olives are not good. From which she's telling us, don't worry about the olives. That darkness is really a higher level of light. It's not evidently light because we don't have the tools to see the darkness as light. But from that darkness comes an even greater light. From our struggles, from our imperfections, from our obstacles, from the darkness in our lives, come the highest light. I think that's a very empowering message. I know it took a while to get to the point, but I hope it's empowering for you as it is for me. We can spread the light, and this is the oil that's produced from the bruised olives from our past, which is not so perfect, which becomes the oil that lights up the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, where God is saying, your oil, your bruised olives are producing the light for the world, the light for me, and the light for the world. Your oil is worthy of illuminating the world. God bless you all. Be safe and happy forever.